The desert was endless. The wind carried the cry of the forgotten, and the dust of broken dreams painted the horizon in shades of sorrow. In this silence, a man named Eliam walked alone, not as a prophet, not as a saint, but as a man who had once fallen so far from grace that even his own soul refused to look back at him. He had betrayed, lied, and taken more than his share. The village he once called home now spoke his name only in whispers, but beneath the shame and the ashes there was still a faint ember, the memory of mercy. One night, as Eliam wandered through the barren hills, he saw a faint light flickering from a cave. It wasn't the kind of light that warms the skin, it was the kind that pierces the soul. Drawn to it, he stepped inside. The walls seemed to breathe, and the air trembled with a presence beyond this world. Then came a voice, not loud, not angry, but sorrowful and kind. "Eliam, do you still believe that mercy can find you?" He fell to his knees. For the first time in years he couldn't speak, only cry. And in those tears something sacred awakened. The man who thought he was too far gone finally felt seen. That night, Eliam found what many seek their entire lives, not perfection, not power, but forgiveness. And so began the mercy road, the journey of flawed souls redeemed by divine love, one act of compassion at a time. He would meet others, souls broken, lost, yet destined to shine, and their stories would shake the gates of heaven itself. Because in the end, mercy isn't weakness, it's the fiercest power heaven ever gave to earth. The thief who carried the flame. Before Eliam became a wanderer, he was known as the thief of Jericho. He stole from travelers, caravans, even from the temple markets. His hands were fast, his heart was hollow, and his soul was chained to hunger, not for food, but for meaning. One day, during the Festival of Lights, Eliam saw a group of travelers carrying oil lamps toward the city. Their faces glowed with peace. Something inside him stirred. He followed them, not to pray, but to steal. That night, as the lamps were lit, he crept among them, his knife hidden beneath his robe. Then one voice stopped him. A woman holding a small lamp whispered, "May this flame remind us that mercy burns even in the darkest night." Eliam froze. Her words pierced through him like an arrow. He dropped the knife, but the sound of it striking the stone drew the guards. Panic erupted. He ran into the hills, clutching one stolen lamp. The desert night was merciless. As the wind howled, he fell to his knees, lamp still burning faintly in his hands. For the first time, he saw not the treasure of gold, but the treasure of light, the kind that could not be stolen. The next morning, he awoke beside a wounded traveler lying on the path, robbed, beaten, dying. Eliam could have walked away, but something in that trembling flame reminded him of the woman's words. He tore his robe, bandaged the man's wounds, and poured his last drop of water on his lips. As the sun rose, the man whispered weakly, "Why? Help me?" Eliam replied, trembling, "Because someone once showed me mercy I did not deserve." That was the day the thief began to die, and the man of mercy began to be born. Eliam carried that lamp for years, never letting it go out. People mocked him, called him cursed, but wherever he went, those who saw the light found hope. He would eventually return to Jericho, not as a thief, but as a servant, rebuilding the homes he once robbed, feeding the hungry, and forgiving those who spat on him. When he died, the villagers found the lamp still burning beside him, and they said, "Heaven waited for him." The woman who forgave the unforgivable. The sun was setting behind the ancient walls of Jericho. The streets were quiet now, except for the whispers that followed a woman whose name few dared to speak, Mara. She had once been the most despised soul in the village. Her husband had been killed by thieves, and in her rage, she had cursed God and turned against everyone tried to comfort her. Her eyes, once soft, had become sharp with bitterness. Mercy, to her, was weakness. Until the day she met Eliam. He had come to Jericho not as a preacher or a prophet, but as a man who rebuilt broken walls, both of stone and of spirit. Mara despised him at first. She mocked his faith, spat near the lamp he carried, and told him mercy had no place in a world of thieves. But Eliam did not answer with anger. He simply said, "I once was the thief you hate." The words struck her like lightning. She laughed, thinking he mocked her pain. But he looked at her, not with shame, not with pity, but with understanding. For days, she avoided him. Yet every time she passed the street, she saw him working silently, his lamp always glowing beside him, even in daylight. It was as if the flame refused to die, as if heaven itself insisted on shining through him. One morning, a group of travelers came, carrying news that chilled her blood. The man who killed her husband had been captured nearby. The crowd gathered to watch the execution. Mara followed, her heart burning with vengeance. When they brought the man out, his face was bruised and swollen, but his eyes were filled with fear and something else she couldn't name. She wanted to scream, to curse him, to make him feel what she had felt. But in that moment, through the noise of the crowd, she saw Eliam standing at a distance, silent, his lamp burning faintly in his hands. The same flame that had once changed him now seemed to reach toward her. And suddenly, she heard words in her heart, not his voice, but the one she had tried to forget for years. "Forgive, as I forgave you." Tears flooded her eyes. She fell to her knees. The guards stopped. The crowd fell silent. Mara whispered, "Let him go. Mercy is greater than death." The execution was halted. The man who killed her husband wept, and Eliam, watching from afar, closed his eyes, whispering, "Another soul has found the road." That night, Mara came to Eliam's home. She placed her hand over the lamp and said, "Teach me how to keep it burning." Years later, after Eliam's passing, Mara continued his work, visiting the sick, forgiving the broken, lighting lamps in every home that knew pain. When she died, it was said that the lamp she had carried glowed for 3 days after her death, a sign, the elders said, that mercy had taken root deep in the heart of the world. Because forgiveness is not a feeling, it is fire, and fire cannot die. The boy who carried the flame. Night had fallen upon Jericho. The desert wind whispered through the narrow streets, carrying the scent of olive oil and dust. Inside a small stone house, a dim lamp flickered beside an old woman's bed. Mara, the woman who had forgiven the unforgivable, breathed her last. But before her light faded, she called for a boy. His name was Asa. No family, no past, a child of the streets. Mara had found him years before, stealing bread near the marketplace. Instead of handing him to the guards, she had offered him a meal. That single act changed everything. Now, as she lay dying, she took his trembling hand and placed it over her heart. "Asa," she whispered, "there is a fire that never dies. It passed from Eliam to me, and now it must burn in you." Her hand fell limp. The lamp beside her flared once, then dimmed, yet its light did not go out. Asa buried her the next morning outside the city walls, beneath a tree that faced the sunrise. The lamp remained by her grave, glowing softly in the wind. From that day forward, Asa carried it everywhere, not as a relic, but as a promise. He wandered from town to town, repairing broken walls as Eliam once did, feeding the hungry, comforting the lost. People mocked him at first, a boy too small, too young to preach mercy. Yet wherever he went, small miracles followed. One evening, in a village plagued by drought, Asa climbed a hill and prayed beside the lamp. The villagers, desperate and angry, called him a fool. "Mercy doesn't fill wells," they spat. But as dawn rose, clouds gathered over the horizon, and for the first time in months, it rained. From that day, they began to listen. Years passed. Asa grew into a man. His hair turned dark like the storm clouds he once prayed under. But his eyes, bright and gentle, always held that same flame. He built no temple, founded no order. He simply taught that mercy must walk, not rest. "Faith without mercy," he said, "is a lamp without oil." But peace is never without its test. One night, a band of soldiers entered his village hunting for rebels. They found Asa helping the wounded and accused him of hiding traitors. They took him, bound his hands, and demanded he reveal the names of those he protected. Asa said nothing. Instead, he asked for his lamp. They laughed, granting his final wish. He lifted it, touching the small flame dancing in the night, and said, "You can take my life, but not this fire." When they struck him down, the lamp fell, yet it did not shatter. It rolled across the sand, still burning, carried by the wind. At dawn, the villagers found it lying beside the river, untouched by blood or storm. They placed it in the temple that Asa never built, and to this day the people of that land tell their children, "If you ever see a small light flickering in the wind, do not put it out. Someone's mercy may be walking beside you." Because mercy is not remembered through statues or scrolls. It lives on through hearts that dare to forgive. And so the flame of Eliam, Mara, and Asa still burns upon the road where heaven meets the broken. The scribe who found the lost flame. The world had changed. Empires had risen and fallen. Kings had died, and languages forgotten. But in the mountains of Dura, where clouds touched stone and silence reigned, a monastery still stood, its walls cracked, its faith fading. Inside, a young scribe named Lucian spent his nights copying old scrolls by candlelight. His ink-stained fingers trembled from exhaustion, yet what tired him most was not the work, it was the emptiness. The monks around him had long lost their zeal. They recited prayers like machines, voices hollow, eyes cold. Mercy had turned into ritual. Faith had become formality. One winter night, as Lucian copied a crumbling text titled "The Path of Light," he found a half-burned line. "The flame still lives where mercy once walked." Something stirred within him. He had never read those words before. That night, he couldn't sleep. The wind outside howled like an unanswered prayer. By dawn, he made a decision. He would find that flame. Lucian left the monastery without permission, carrying nothing but his quill, parchment, and a broken lantern. He followed the ruins of an old trade road down the mountain, the same road the ancients once called Mercy Road. Days turned into weeks. The road was barren, only dust, bones, and silence. But one night, as he slept beneath the stars, he dreamt of a woman's voice, gentle and radiant, whispering, "Follow the wind that remembers mercy." He awoke to see a faint light flickering on the horizon. At first, he thought it was a campfire, but as he approached, he saw something miraculous, a small glass lamp, half buried in sand, glowing softly though no oil burned inside. He lifted it with trembling hands. The moment he touched it, warmth surged through his body, and visions filled his mind, of Eliam rebuilding the walls, Mara forgiving her enemies, and Asa holding the lamp before the soldiers. Lucian fell to his knees. He had found it. The flame of mercy still lived. He carried it back to the monastery. The monks mocked him, calling it superstition. "The age of miracles is gone," they said. But Lucian simply smiled. "The flame is not dead, we are." That night during Vespers, he placed the lamp on the altar. The abbot laughed, until the flame inside suddenly brightened, filling the chapel with golden light. The walls, once dull, shimmered like they were alive. The monks fell silent. For the first time in years, their prayers carried tears. Over time, people from nearby villages began climbing the mountain again. The monastery, once forgotten, became a beacon of hope. The hungry were fed, the sick were healed, and mercy walked once more. Lucian never claimed credit. He called himself the keeper of the flame, nothing more. He spent his last years transcribing one book, Mercy Road, The Flame That Never Dies. When he died, the lamp burned for 7 days beside his body, never fading. No one knows where it went after that. Some say angels took it. Others believe it waits to be found again by anyone whose heart dares to forgive. Because mercy is not just remembered, it is reborn. Every time one soul chooses compassion over judgment, every time someone lights a candle instead of raising a sword, every time the road feels dark and we walk anyway. And somewhere the flame still burns. The kingdom of ashes and light. The empire was dying, its banners torn, its streets silent. Once it had ruled continents. Now only smoke and ruin remained. In the heart of the capital, beneath a sky veiled with ash, a young soldier named Kael stood among the fallen. His armor was cracked, his faith gone. The city had burned for weeks, and so had his soul. He had seen mercy die 1,000 times on the battlefield. He had watched men kill for pride, priests bless for gold, and kings turn prayers into weapons. On the last night of the war, as he stumbled through the ruins, Kael entered the great cathedral of Seraphis. Its ceiling was shattered, its altar desecrated. Only one thing remained, a single lamp, half buried in rubble, glowing faintly through the dust. He stared in disbelief. It couldn't be. The same symbol was carved into its glass, the cross within a circle, the mark of Mercy Road. Kael lifted it, and warmth rushed through him. He heard whispers, not of war but of peace. Voices of Eliam, Mara, Asa, and Lucian, their words blending like a divine choir. Where mercy lives, darkness dies. For the first time, Kael wept. He sank to his knees amid the ruin, the flame glowing against his broken armor. The next morning, soldiers from both sides approached the cathedral, ready to fight one last battle. But what they found stopped them cold. Kael stood on the steps, holding the lamp high. Behind him, sunlight pierced through the smoke, making the broken stained glass shimmer like living fire. No one spoke, no one moved. And then, one soldier dropped his sword, another knelt. Within minutes, the entire battlefield was silent. Kael didn't command them. He simply said, Mercy is the only victory left. That day the war ended, not by power, not by treaty, but by light. Years passed. The empire rebuilt. The Cathedral of Seraphis became a place of pilgrimage. No king ever sat on the throne again. Only councils of the humble, chosen not for wealth but for compassion. Kael never took credit for the miracle. He disappeared into the countryside, carrying the lamp wherever mercy was needed. A plague village, a refugee camp, a home for orphans. When he died, they found the lamp beside him, still glowing. And inside the flame, faintly etched were the names: Eliam, Mara, Asa, Lucian, Kael, the 5 keepers of the flame. The road had come full circle, but legend says the lamp was not buried with him. It was seen once more centuries later, carried by a nameless child fleeing war, her tiny hands protecting its light as bombs fell around her. And so the flame traveled again, through time, through blood, through mercy, waiting for the next heart brave enough to carry it. Because the mercy road never ends. It simply changes form, from a road of stone to a road of hearts. And every act of forgiveness, every moment of compassion, every time someone chooses love over hate, a spark of that eternal lamp burns again.